Welcome everybody. Thanks very much indeed. So welcome to our first monthly lecture of 2022. As many who've joined before may be aware, this is something we started last year as a way to engage with our membership, who, as we cannot meet face to face as regularly as we would like. And so we started some monthly lectures. And as this is our 30th year, we will have some special events going on through the year. And I guess the first of these is a monthly lecture about a bit of the history of the park and the old days in the park, and also the 30 years of the Friends. So with that, I guess I was the one who got to put this together and to deliver it, because I've been probably associated with them for longer than most anyway. So there we go. That's that. So I'll hand over to Chantal to give us or give a brief introduction.
You did all the intro. Anyway,
that was just you're introducing me. Okay, you can do that. And I'll just switch presentation as well. So apologies for this. Thanks. So yes. Okay, and I'm still having to admit people. So yeah, go ahead. Right.
Okay, so good evening, everyone.
I can find it. Yes, there we go.
Simon, you gotta let me speak.
Go ahead.
Well, good evening, everyone. So welcome to our January 22 lecture. So our speaker this evening, as you already know, is Simon Smith, our vice president. Simon's going to be giving us an overview of the Friends' accomplishments over the last 30 years. And for those that know Simon, you know that he loves to take pictures. And tonight he'll share some of them with us and take us through memory lane over the last 30 years. So a brief background on Simon. He first came to the park on 12th of April, 1986. He was actually the second member of the Friends of Frontenac. The first member was Anne Robertson. Simon has served on the board for a total of 22 years. The first time on the board was from 91 to 2000. And then he had to step down because he was transferred to the US for work. So then he returned in 2008 with the promise of a hot dog. And he has been an active member ever since. So a little fun fact about Simon, in all those 22 years of service on the board, he has only ever completed the Frontenac Challenge once, and that was in 2021. So he made it a memorable one, and I think from some of his pictures, you'll see that he wore his lovely Frontenac Park t-shirt for every hike, and he took his picture at every sign with his beloved t-shirt.
Yes.
So anyways, you can take it away now, Simon.
Thank you very much. I have to correct that because it's twice. I did it last year as well. So first time was in 2020. So, but yeah. Chantal still has my certificate. Sorry. Okay, so
you have to come pick it up.
I do. Yes.
Okay. Take it away.
Thank you very much. And welcome again, everybody. Thanks for joining. I will have to keep an eye on things because people keep joining, and I'm the one who have to admit them. So I will pause. Thanks so much for the introduction, Chantal. Yes, it's as some of us were reminiscing earlier. This 30 years has gone by incredibly fast, and so it's remarkable that some aspects seem like yesterday. I will mention the day job just to say one reason I love the park so much and the area is because I've had a rather strange day job, you might say, throughout my entire career has been associated with designing filters for gas masks. It's a rather odd thing to do, and I kind of got into it in England before I came to Canada, came to RMC on the strength of work in that area, and have then worked in Brockville primarily, about 31 years, in a company many people know, 3M, designing the innards, as it were, of the respirator filters. So I think that's an obscure enough career that you could retire quietly, but unfortunately COVID happened, and all of a sudden everybody's interested in respirator filters. And so the last year at least has been involved in working on a new standard, Canadian standard for respirator filters, which has now been published. So if anybody wishes to know how you test an N95 type respirator, that's the document to look for, and that's what I've been busy with. So it's interesting, and that work is continuing. We're still working to expand that standard, and I'm involved in a lot of other areas around respirators. So unfortunately, still haven't had the time to get out and enjoy the park as much as I'd like, but there we go. Thanks. So yes, it's been a long time. first of all, just going to say a bit about when I first arrived at Frontenac in 1986. It was, interestingly, via Harrowsmith, because I hadn't even discovered Sydenham Road at the time, being new to Kingston. And so I followed the signs and eventually found a direct route there. So there's a few slides about the early days before the Friends, and then some slides and talk about 30 years of the Friends. And I apologize, I realize in reviewing this, it's very factual. It's more about this is what we did kind of thing, rather than the fun times and the people so much. So apologies for that. And I hope perhaps another time later in the year, someone may wish, or some group of people may wish to talk about more about the social and the fun things that have gone on. But for people maybe new to the Friends, or even old to the Friends, or maybe new to the park, this will be information about what we've been doing over those years. So here you see the old sign and the new sign. Just to say, in 1986, I'm just trying to make the slide advance. Frontenac Park was new. It had been formed by land acquisition over the 70s and became an operational park pretty much in 1985. The building we call the park office now, the trail center, was built in 84. The overall trail and campsite system was installed pretty much all in one go in a very short time. First of all, it had 11 campsites. It was not that expensive to come to, but they did sort of get to a running start, and I have a lot of the early information if people are interested in that. With a skills program, a wilderness skills program that of course continues to this day. They put an introductory slideshow together, Threshold to Wilderness, that was very informative. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the other things, Alphabet Soup and the staff as well as we go. Some of the early guides, interesting point that although now we have this thing we call the tabloid, the park newspaper, back until 1993, in fact, there were 2 per year, a summer and a winter one. So there's a focus on that. There were trail guides, the Arab Lake Gorge Trail Guide, which remarkably featured me on it. I didn't realize that till I saw that guy's got my watch, and that guy's got my camera. And it was me. It was taken sort of without me knowing by one of the park staff. And the later version actually has David Stokes and Elmer Van Aggs on it, who are the parents of the first park receptionist, Chris Bowes. Just an interesting small world we live in. So yes, we had the tabloids and various editions of park brochure. The map early on was perhaps not as detailed as the one we're used to now. And you see here the southern section is missing some features like the Inner Slide Lake Loop. Oddly, any loop names, they didn't actually have loop names till later. Strangely, some kind of 401 right down to Site 2. The northern section again is slightly different. Clearly no campsites 12 or 13, but also even the Tetzmine Junction area, the trails officially didn't meet at that point. But you can see we didn't manage to lose too many people in the early days with this map. It's been far less detailed than the sort of ones we're familiar with now, but it is interesting that how much technology has advanced in those 30 some years to give us the very detailed map and informative map that we have now. There was a slideshow, as I mentioned, a 16-minute slideshow that introduced the park with a kind of coordinated 3-projector state-of-the-art technology in those days. I have the slides from this right now. I've scanned them, and so made a record. And it's kind of interesting because these are now a historical record from nearly 40 years ago. We've got, for instance, the middle slide at the top is actually the park office dock, but there was no dock. It was just a slope into the water. People familiar with it may see the lookout from sort of from near Site 5 down to Big Salmon Lake, bottom left. Some of the human structures, the barns and buildings, were actually more intact than they are now. Some have been left to decay and collapse. And I think bottom right is, I think, what $20 at Canadian Tire bought you in those days. It was a decent tent. So yes, it was interesting that people would be happy to sit through 16 minutes. I don't think the attention span nowadays is that long, but it was a very sort of inspiring slideshow, and I have managed to recreate it. I have a video, so we can actually get a commentary to it at some point as well if we wish to do that as a project. So a bit about volunteering before the Friends as well, that did exist, and we had a volunteer agreement to sign, and then you could be assigned to different things. I signed up in 1988 for that, and I still have the hat. Where's it gone? There we are. It'll appear in a minute. With that, we have some things that we do now carried on then. We had spring trail sweep. We had construction work, and then other various activities, moving equipment in for construction. And so there it is. I'm trying to show the hat. Sorry, that's the hat. Still have the hat. Surveying some sites for builds as well. So there was a rather smaller crew of volunteers. One interesting thing we did was to measure the portages with a sort of device that rolled out string and measured the string as it was laid out. And you could sort of fix the string with little rocks and twigs along the path, so you made an accurate measurement of the portage length. They made some estimates before, and some were wildly off. But interestingly, the measurements that are still used are those ones made by the string. They haven't been changed by GPS, so I guess we were pretty lucky to get it right then. So I had a couple of years volunteering before the Friends. The skills program was, of course, a major part of the park early on, and continues to this day. And so there's a few slides there from the early days. We had William Reynolds, who wrote the book Wildflowers of Canada, came to give a photography presentation. Bill Mason, top right, in March 1987. Some records say it was June, but clearly snow on the ground. It was March. Came and to talk about trip planning. That was unfortunately the year before he died, so we were very lucky to have him then. And bottom left, you see Anne Robertson, who's, let's say, first Friends president, still Friends member, who led our nature hikes. And we have one there, bottom right, on wilderness cooking and camp stove use. They're making bannock. That's a guy called Doug Samuels, who was a student at Queen's at the time. And so we had a good range of skills programs, but they were all organized by the park, of course, in the absence of the Friends. Interestingly, it's funny how things turn around, that back in 1986, there was one of the first gypsy moth infestations. Of course, we can expect another infestation this coming summer, having had for the last year as well. And it was this time they're actually introducing methods to try and limit them with biological toxins. And park gave them their own tabloid. The fisher population was low. You remember the fishers that you see in the park office. They were recovering from near extirpation by hunting, and so porcupines were a lot more common. One can remember that most hikes you were going to see a porcupine or two, and nowadays it's quite rare to see porcupines, because again the fishers are one of the few animals that will take a porcupine. And wild turkeys have been recently reintroduced as well. I actually had a field naturalist trip my first few weeks in Canada out to the Thousand Islands area to look for wild turkeys. And now, they again have recovered well. The pictures actually of those are taken in my backyard. They're not even in the park because they are very, very frequent visitors. So interesting differences. Just to mention some of the staff over the years, but this is for the park, not the Friends, but Lloyd Chapman was the superintendent when I first arrived. And he is now retired, but is still in Kingston. And then Bert Corporal was the assistant superintendent. He was, of course, a very long-serving. I think he had 33 years at Frontenac, and prior to that had been in Northern Ontario. Absolute fount of knowledge for everything to do with the outdoors, and I think still works with the Ontario parks to provide them with training. Agnes Bortolucci was what was called the Wilderness Skills Coordinator. And this was a third full-time position that the park had, which ended around 1990. And Janine Papadopoulos, in the bottom slide there, was in fact taking over that position after Aggie left. Aggie is now the assistant superintendent at Sandbanks Provincial Park. And I mentioned Chris. She was the first park receptionist, and so Father David there, and I'm still in touch with Chris. She's come to some of these talks and maybe on the line now. Thanks. And then after Chris, Karen Langley took over the position for the long term, and she retired after 22 years. And you see with her also Peter Dawson, who was the superintendent after a brief interim when Ben Chabot took over. But after Lloyd retired, we have Ben, and then we had Peter. Daryl Ferber's park warden, and he's responsible for some of the conservation control in the park and the area around it. Ben is now our current park superintendent, and to say he had a short period in the 2000s when he took over, and is now our full-time superintendent. Janina mentioned, and then we had many students and volunteers over the years, so many thanks to them also. Couple of other things you may hear if you visit the park, XMI 783 being rattled out. This is the park's radio call sign. And in the day before cell phones, in fact, when the park was pretty much in a cell phone empty zone, we used radios much more extensively. We gave our volunteers training in radios. And so every transmission ends with XMI 783 to identify the base station. And long-term associates may remember 085. This was the vehicle that was used sometimes to transport volunteers to nether regions of the park, and was always around the office, and that was much loved, and that was known by its call sign of 085. So, and you see there that the park office, as we call it now, was in those days the trail center. I'm afraid that sometimes is hard to change from. Okay, one more thing. There was an interesting fact. There was a park cabin at one time where some of the students used to reside during the summer when they worked there. This was on this piece of crown land that was detached from the park. It's on the shores of North Otter Lake, and that land was transferred. It was crown land transferred to the park in the update to the master plan recently. But the cabin itself was considered unsafe and was dismantled around 1989. Might have been an interesting project one day to build another one, again for the benefit of the employees, so they didn't have to travel in and out every day. But that's a long-term thought. Okay, so that was a bit about the background to the park itself in the early days, and then rest of the talk will be primarily around the Friends and the startup and other things that we have done over the years. So it was back in 1990, in fact, when there was a move to establish cooperating associations, as they're called. That's friends groups for many of the operating parks. I think it's now around 36. And Frontenac, being a popular park, was on the list to do that. And it was someone called Gary Former, a Ministry of Natural Resources employee, and Ministry of Natural Resources, or MNR, ran the parks in the days before Ontario Parks was established. He was responsible for creating some of these groups, and so with a team in Kingston from various nature groups, the Scouts, some of the park volunteers, they set up a planning committee which laid out the original constitution that hasn't really changed very much, and some of the operating guidelines with input from other parks that already had operating associations, and established the basic plan. And the first board was established in 1991 in September at the park with a vote of people who had joined the Friends at that point. And that was, as Chantal mentioned, that's when I was beaten to the signing in by Anne Robertson, but I managed to be second member. We had 8 members on the first board. We've expanded that number since. And Janine Papadopoulos, who had been the park wilderness skills coordinator, but had left when that position had been eliminated, she was the first president of the Friends. And then Anne Robertson took over as the second, and we have a series of people since then, some of whom are on the call tonight. And again, we look forward to getting back in touch with some people. Interestingly, people remember that period. That was the NDP government, and so the government was very generous in that I and 2 other board members, Anne Burke-Corporal, went down to a Friends group meeting in Pinery, Provincial Park. This is on the shores of Georgian Bay. to learn from other Friends groups that have been operating for some time. A lot of the, I guess, background to operating Friends groups, get updates on things like the demographics of the population and where effort was needed, learning from them, from their exercises. It was a weekend meeting, but it was very good indeed and very advantageous. And on the way back from that in the car, we actually started discussing some of the ways we might organize volunteer programs. But early on, the first projects we wanted to look at was producing a large-scale map of the park, getting a Friends newsletter going, and this volunteer structure. The actual formal agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources wasn't signed until July of 1992. This is why we have a kind of several month period. It's our 30th anniversary, because do you count the first board or do you count that signing as the start of the Friends? So it was it gives us some generous time to celebrate 30 years. But as I say, that doesn't seem like long ago. With respect to the map, first of all, with the old topographic maps, I guess they're still around, we found Frontenac lay at the corner of 4 of them. So it was actually quite awkward if you wanted to use a map in the park, other than the sort of, as you saw, the fairly generally drawn map that came with the park brochure. So we had a map team. The government provided $10,000. Local artists donated artwork, and the team worked to create a map using information from the ministry, and also developing material to go on the back of the map to inform the park visitors. And that first edition came out in October 1993. Top left picture there, you actually see the launching event at the park office. And from the third edition, in the late 1996, early 1997, we had assistance from Queen's University to provide GPS mapping of the key features in the park. Certainly the trails, the portages, some of the lake boundaries have been added over the years. And so we had several days of out with the what was then high-tech GPS system. These were the days when GPS wasn't actually generally available. It was still a military technology. And we collected data with the equipment that you see there, but we couldn't actually just look on a map and sort of do real-time mapping. The data had to go back to Queen's University to go through a computer program to be then made into accurate information, because there was a particular inaccuracy installed in the system to prevent, I guess, people using it in the general public. It was still a military technology, so we had to have special permission to do this. Now, of course, nowadays, of course, things are completely different. With the map, it was improved over the years. We added shading from the 5th edition. You see actually the committee top right looking, not the committee, actually the board, sorry, sort of considering that plan. And now we have the 6th edition, and so it's a very popular item. It makes a fair amount of money for the Friends through sales. It's available at the park office and, of course, through retail outlets in the region. So that is something the Friends have done that has been extremely useful for visitors. The newsletter has started, and we're 3 times a year. Peter Owens is our current newsletter editor, and we are very, I guess, grateful to have this publication with lots of information in it from Friends members, from the park staff, people's experiences, nature information, and of course a calendar of events. So it's say first edition you see there, and it's now I think hitting close to 100 issues. And we've also had a winter lecture in Kingston, and this has been at the library or sometimes at Queen's, sometimes at Ongonada, and there we have people come, some local, some from recognized national experts in outdoor tripping to speak. We have our winter lecture coming up, and I'll be talking about that right at the end of the talk here. In fact, Maureen Sly is going to be presenting at that, and she's the lady in purple bottom left in that image there. So our AGM, by the way, our annual general meeting, has moved around, but we do now associate it with the winter lecture, and we now do this on a weekend, so we have a relaxed time period to have 2 speakers, and if we can meet face to face, which we're not this year, it's going to be virtual, but normally we have some socializing in between. Oops, sorry, wrong way. And then the volunteer programs. again, a big feature of the Friends operations. We have both trail programs where people go out and do minor maintenance on the trails and interact with the public, and indoor programs, a host program where people work in the park office normally. Again, we'll be having program in the vicinity of the park office coming up, so that new visitors to the park can obtain information while they're waiting to buy permits and so on with the park staff. We laid this out as something that it would not be too challenging for people to do. We weren't expecting every volunteer to have to learn how to use a chainsaw or engage in sort of heavy labor. The idea was that it was for people who would normally hike in the park to augment what they did using simple tools as needed, interacting with the public, dealing with lost property, things like that, to support the park operations and act as eyes and ears as well of the park staff. So reporting major problems that needed more intervention. We started with a dozen people back in '92, and now we have more than 60 people signed up for these volunteer programs. And we also covered the hosting in 2000 so that the park could open on winter weekends, which it hadn't previously. And so, yes, we have pictures of the training that is offered every springtime. We will have some arrangement for training this coming year. It'll probably be outdoors. And then we have spring trail clearing and work bees, and fall trail clearing, sometimes work bees in the fall as well. So it's a way to get the park ready for the year. And so here you see some of the volunteer activities. Sorry, it's probably a delay in the slide transferring. We have hosting, and then we have transferring materials. Here is top center constructing a railing on the bridge over the Milton Gorge on the Little Salmon Loop. Again, improving trails, and one thing, of course, by maintaining trails well, we reduce the impact from people walking off trail to get around flooded areas. So building boardwalks where necessary and so on is a help, not only for the visitors, but also in park conservation. Middle bottom, we had to actually reroute a portage due to beaver activity a few years ago. One big one is also replacing the trail markers, as they sometimes fall off trees, or trees fall that have them. So we have to maintain those to make sure, obviously, that people aren't going to lose their way on the trails. So it's a way to contribute to the park, and good fun, and way to meet people and make friends. So if anybody is thinking of this, I highly recommend getting involved, and you can contact us through the park website. And one thing to mention, bottom right, is that for our trail sweep days, we have chili provided by other volunteers, Joe McDuff and Kathy Murray there. So that's a treat for people once they finish their trail sweep. Okay, and say for people who've been joining, this is talk about the Friends, and I'm afraid to say, I'll just emphasize that again, it is somewhat factual rather than sort of more social activities that have been going on. So apologies for that, but say maybe later we'll have the chance to talk more on the fun stuff that's gone on. But some of the things that have happened are that we have, as a Friends group, supported the acquisition of land to augment the park area, donated funds, so that should property come up for sale that is available and adjacent to the park, we can add that in. And one successful event was in 2000, where a small segment that had been sort of a chunk bitten out of the park on Buck Lake was added into the park. And actually, bottom picture, you see Dora Hunter, who is on the call tonight, a former president of the Friends, and one of the people very much involved in the natural history group that we had. And so welcome, Dora, and thanks again. This isn't forgotten. Other things the Friends have been involved in was creating new trails. When the park was set up, there were the two short trails, Arab Gorge and Doe Lake Loop, or trail, sorry. But after that, next trail was sort of 4 to 5 hours in hiking time. So Bufflehead and dedication trails have been added to provide 2 to 3 hour hiking options, so that people just coming for an afternoon have something that they can do without having to do retracing steps. And again, the Friends are involved in that, with surveying the routes, marking them out and maintaining them. And so, yeah, and this is dedication trail, and this is the area that was added on Buck Lake. So just a small 10-hectare segment there. So we continue to maintain an acquisition fund, and again, where it is possible to purchase properties, we are very interested in that idea. So we have some frequent discussions with the township as well about available materials. So mentioned already the skills program that was started right when the park got going and continues, and as well as the skills program that the park has maintained over the years, the Friends augment this with providing skills programs in specific areas. And so one popular one we should mention has been winter camping. People come from all over to undertake the winter camping training. And at top you see Earhart, Frenzel and Dunstables. We, until COVID, we had been offering this program right up to now. We were able sometimes to have an overnight trip as well, so that people could go out and experience winter camping in tents and also in snow shelters, quinsies, to really appreciate this challenging experience. And so we will planning to continue this, of course, as we can, pandemic permitting. And we also have more programs in camping skills, map and compass training, and other areas. Here are some examples. We actually have a lady from Queens, not a Friends program, but a park one on hot winter camping with the stove. Here we have snow shelter building, and then we've had canoe and kayak courses, and bottom center, Jerome McDuff, they're teaching. This is summer camping, and again, people can learn about the equipment, techniques, and safety aspects of camping summer and winter. Two slides on the right are Dave Lucas, current board member, who teaches navigation, and we take it right from simple map work to map and compass, and now use of GPS devices too. So the courses have an indoor component, learning the basics, and then outdoors on a trail or finding a trail with using the skills learned practically. And the bottom one actually reminds me, Dave also does Tai Chi, I guess. So. And then the big feature of the Friends is the Frontenac Challenge. And this is, again, how many people may first come across our group or come across the park, is because they come again from a long way away to participate in the challenge, which is to hike all of the trail loops in the park. Probably have some discussion over how long that is. Maybe 110, maybe 150 kilometers, but it's a lot of kilometers. And this is done in September, October, and people who complete it get a certificate. And we have historically had a big get together as well for those to pick up their certificates. It's now entering its 30th year. So some people have done many years of contiguous challenges. And for those who may not be able or have the time to complete all of the challenges, we have a junior challenge, just 6 of the trails, and a Frontenac Trek, which is 6, excluding the 2 shortest trails, for those who need that. And a few years ago, we introduced an all-season camper challenge, which is for people who camp in the park at least once a month, every month for a 12-month period. Doesn't sort of have a fixed start or end time, but doing that, you can then get a nice patch to sew on the backpack. It is interesting to me that you get a piece of paper for doing the challenge, sometimes a crest, depending on how many years you've done it, but people still come from all over, from Quebec, from Western Ontario, to come and do the challenge in this park. And for next year, or I guess next summer, this year, we'll be having a canoe challenge as well. So some features of the challenge to talk about. I guess over the years, interesting things have emerged. You sort of have a contest to do the challenge in the fastest time possible. And I guess I'm not aware of the latest, but it's sort of getting down to extremely short, 30-something hours by people who are extremely dedicated. We also seem to have a drive to sort of the youngest challenge participants, and getting down to the 5-year-olds now who've done the entire challenge. And I think a 4-year-old now having done the entire camping challenge. We have, again, prior to COVID, we had a get together to hand out certificates. With the challenge, and the bottom there, we usually have a theme. simply, it's an honor system, but every loop has somewhere on it a might say keyword or key phrase, and you note that down and hand that in to prove you've done that loop. Every year is a theme, and so now we have not only the sort of handing out of certificates, but also a talk on the theme. It may be birds, maybe fungi, maybe some of the history of the families that lived in the park, and so on. And so we build some education component as well into the challenge. And with that, we also have a barbecue, or have had a barbecue until numbers got too big to have a barbecue, but we can continue that. And it's not just humans that do it. Dogs are also able challenge participants too. And just to mention Audrey Sanger in the picture bottom right, she's the person who has completed most challenges, I think 29 without a break. So she was invited to cut the cake at our 25th anniversary. Okay, just a few more things that we've been involved in. We support education initiatives with the local school board. They organize something called Classroom Without Walls. So classes come from Loughborough Public School and other schools to spend a week at the park. They don't stay overnight, they just come every day for a week and learn each day different aspects associated with natural and human history of the area. So we have had Friends volunteers lead some of the training there and lead hikes for the kids as well. And one thing we realize is going to really support this program is to have an outdoor shelter. Again, because of COVID restrictions, limiting the numbers we might be able to have inside, and also just to provide extra space for people. So we do have a plan underway, fundraising in progress right now to build an outdoor shelter. This is a projected image. It's going to be close to the park office. If you do visit, you can see a sign showing where it's going to be. And we have acquired some materials for this already and have a plan to construct this during the early part of this year, and actually hope to open it in August. So that will provide, again, a venue for education initiatives, both the school visits and also the skills programs to take place in outdoors, out of the rain, but again, in the natural environment. We also have initiatives to look at the human and natural history of the park. And it's had a long history of human occupation from indigenous peoples forwards, and the Friends members over the years have undertaken research into the peoples, families and businesses that inhabited the park and some of the activities that were undertaken. And it's interesting that people come to the park, of course, for a wilderness type of experience, but a lot of it was actually farmed. There are active mines in many places in the park, and a lot of logging activity is also. Very few of the trees that you see in the park are actually old growth original trees. Ones you tend to notice because they're so big, and you do see a lot of the tree stumps that show the size of the trees and also the soil height, for instance. So it is returning to nature, but it has a significant amount of human history. Jerome McDuff has been providing a historical hike in the springtime for many years to some of the sites of the farmsteads and other buildings that were along the Salmon Lake Road. We have, over recent years, been installing plaques in certain places to inform people about the history. And I think we now have 6. The latest came in August last year, where we added one on indigenous peoples, and we had an unveiling ceremony with the Antoine family, who were the last indigenous family to live in the park, and descendants of them came to undertake the unveiling. For people who have a keen interest, a book called Their Enduring Spirit was created by Chris Barber and Terry Fuchs in the late 80s, early 90s. They interviewed a lot of the descendants of the families who had lived in the park, created a very comprehensive series of stories and history of the park itself. And Chris Barber used to lead historical hikes as well earlier on, and sometimes historical canoe trips as well, which are quite fascinating to be on. So that's a great reference source for the history of the park. When it comes to natural history, of course, we have an absolute richness in the park because of its location. It's Canadian Shield type terrain, similar to Northern Ontario, but in the southern climate. So we have many species of animals and plants that are at the limit of their range or found in numbers in the park much greater than in the surrounding area. We have always realized that natural history was a big part of I guess, why people came to the park, and also of the information that we could be involved in imparting. So we've had guided walks. Thanks to Dora Hunter, we've had them nearly every month at one time, but we now have periodic guided walks, spring and fall, to discuss natural history in the seasons throughout the years. We've had a group one time doing some fairly intensive research into the natural history and discovering some plants that were not even known to exist in the park, including the orchid purple twayblade. And we've created guides and checklists also to aid visitors and species identification. So it's been, again, a very good history. We have an osprey nest on South Otter Lake, which is visible from the Doe Lake Loop. And deer, of course, are very common. I noticed during the challenge last year that the deer seem to be a lot less skittish than usual, a lot less fearful. They kind of almost walk up to you. In the middle is what is now called a grey rat snake. That is actually one we had for a visitor demonstration, but they are found in the park. They're provincially quite rare. And Anne Robertson, again, still leading nature hikes, even 40 years after the first picture. And Dora, bottom right, leading a winter nature hike. We also have strong interest from the bird side as well. We have a spring bird walk for many years. And in 2015, with a lot of input from Carolyn Bonter, we established a Christmas bird count. So this is a 25-kilometer radius circle based on the park that contributes to the overall international bird count that takes place at that time of year. And so we now contribute at that level. And we've had programs to introduce birding to children. Again, Caroline has been very active in that area. The park gained status as an important bird and biodiversity area. And just to mention, we are also part of the Ontario Nature Federation. There's not many park groups involved, in fact. It's mostly nature groups like the Kingston Field Naturalists, but we participate because of our natural history. And so we meet to learn from these groups and to participate in their activities as well. So you can get a lot of information on how they interact with their members and visitors and so on, and sharing programs that go on, and also speakers too we can learn from. So it's I guess natural history, long established, a very strong part of what the Friends has done. A couple of activities going on right now, in fact, are some natural history surveys. We have the Canid survey, and we received a grant over 5 years to cover the costs for this. This is to look at the DNA by collecting the scat of wolves and coyotes, because of the question of what actual type of canid do we have in the park, having been significant in interbreeding between wolves and coyotes. So to establish this, particularly if the animals in the park were of the eastern wolf or the red wolf type, that would probably give them enhanced protection. And so that survey is ongoing right now. Here you see Chantal, our current president, involved in the collection of the scat. We have trained people who collect scat, particularly in winter, and then it goes to Trent University for the DNA analysis. And we can also, of course, analyze the diet as well. And one thing that I guess I got us involved in through, oddly, a work meeting I was involved in that was about air pollution. There is something called the International Biomonitoring Survey, which is looking at the transportation of air pollution. Because moss doesn't have roots, it gets all of its nutrients from the air. It's actually a very good way to monitor the air because it takes out its ambient environment. So every 5 years internationally, there is a collection of moss across the world that's then again analyzed for a set of chemicals, heavy metals, even plastics now, and other things like nitrogen, and they can look at soot to look at the transportation of air pollution. So you think maybe that's not a problem in Frontenac, it's a very clean area. Interestingly, yes, but when you look at the prevailing winds, we're downwind from some of the heavy industry areas in the US. So we may be seeing, possibly, first year we're doing this, but we may actually see results of transporter pollution that, again, would be surprising for us. So that's going right now. Very simple, just collect moss and send it to, again, it's Trent University it's run from, and they analyze the moss there, and we will get the results of the survey, I guess, in the coming year. They divide the country into, I think it's 50 kilometer squares to do this. And so if anybody's interested in participating, say, in an area away from Kingston, I can pass on information as well, because again, they are interested to build a matrix right across the country for this air pollution analysis. So, bit on social activities. So again, Friends has got, as you will have gathered, a very structured series of activities it undertakes with its contributions to the park and to the needs of visitors. We do have time for social events too. Early on, we actually planned kind of regular monthly events, something every month, but that sort of decayed. We got low participation, so that was just stopped, and we decided to have the regular hikes and events that we have every year. But we have a summer hike, usually the weekend before Canada Day. Used to be a hike to Flagpole Hill. It's kind of moved on to being a paddle, usually with overnight camping for people who want it at Site 4. Then recently, in 2018, we established a summer family fun day for friends, members, and their families, where we have free use of canoes, activities for children, and this year it's actually going to be combined with our 30th anniversary celebration, and also we hope the opening of our outdoor shelter. We've also, again, just recently started first day hikes on New Year's Day, 10 a.m. on New Year's Day, if anybody is up and about then. We do a hike around the Doe Lake Loop, and that's now happened 3 years in a row. So this is, again, a provincial effort. Every park is trying to encourage people to do a first day hike in their park. So you see some of the activities from our Family Fun Day on the right, and then the President's Paddle. Or in, I think, 2014, this became the Memorial Paddle in memory of Erhard Frenzel, who unfortunately had died the year before. So it's now called the Memorial Paddle. People are kind enough to make donations to the Friends, and just to mention where some of this this funding goes, we do buy materials for the park to upgrade walkways, boardwalks, campsites. We then have them for use the donations for establishing some of the new signs that you will have seen at the trailheads. We put in the historical plaques and have provided some of the displays in the park office. The fawn display there, we have turkeys and other things. So the funds donated to the Friends do go to support these causes and the needs of the park operation. And as mentioned earlier, property acquisition as well, of course. In the past, we have bought canoes even for students to use in the park to do the park maintenance activities in the summer. Many publications over the years. Volunteers have created guides to particular trails and to the fauna and flora of the park. Again, we maintain these. I think long term, we would probably want to look at expanding the series of these as well. One thing we had recently over the last few years is trying to create a sort of one-page summary of the park, two-page summary in other languages, so that visitors from abroad or new to Canada can learn about the park in their own language. So again, we're actually interested if people do speak languages from Europe and other places. We will be perhaps interested in if they would be willing to help translate or create a translation of the text that we have for this. We have other souvenir merchandise, t-shirts, crests, and we've had coasters in the past, hiking sticks, and t-shirts, of course, and the famous map t-shirt that we know and love. Our internet presence has been, again, now for 25 years. Shane Peters is our current webmaster. And so it's a site now where you can go and learn more, sign up for the various events and the skills programs on the website. So it takes a lot of the day-to-day management away from having to have someone dedicated to it. We've contributed to the master plan, and every so often we have a vision day, and this is where we invite members to come up to the park and we discuss the direction the Friends is going, new ideas for activities or projects we might take on. And last one was in 2014, and again, we probably would consider one of the next few years again. So if you have ideas again about what the Friends can do, where we might spend time, initiatives we can take on, that's always interested in those, but we do have a specific time as well where we try and gather these together to make plans. So that's a bit of what we've been about. It wouldn't be complete without mentioning some of the people who've been involved with the Friends and who have departed. I'm very much indebted to Jerome McDuff, who a few years ago at our 25th year for our winter lecture, he did provide a fairly comprehensive review of some of the people who have unfortunately passed away. And I'll just, I can't do it the same justice in the time we have, but I will mention some people as you see there. Rick Brizet, one of our very early members and volunteers. He worked as a teacher, and he was on the board for a couple of years. He was actually in 1995 at staying at Campsite 8, involved in putting out a bushfire. He was also involved in the publicity of the second edition of the map, which was very successful. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1999, and a memorial was established in his name. You'll see a board in the park office, and this is to the volunteer who's contributed to the park conservation in the greatest way. So that's awarded to one or more people every year. It is just a name recognition, that's it, but it's again a way that we remember Rick and the work that he did. Tom Marsh was very dedicated volunteer. He was on the board right from the start. He was responsible for several things, including the newsletter. He established the first Friends store that really has been absorbed into park operations. And then he led some of the nature hikes as well. He also really coordinated the initial Frontenac Challenge and structured that and got it going in the form that we have it. So he has contributed a huge amount to the park. He was also involved in creation of that Buffalo Trail I mentioned, and some of the trail guides. And we had a natural history group with Dora Hunter that you see in the picture on the middle right there, and Maureen Sly, as a lady who'll be speaking at our next lecture. And they were the ones undertaking research into the orchids. In fact, the bottom picture there, I think, is one of Dora's, and that's showing Tom going out on an inflatable mat to look for orchids in the one of the swamps in the northern part of the park. So we are greatly indebted to Tom, who supported the Friends in so many ways. Mentioned Terry Fuchs. He was professor of English at Queen's and at RMC, also a member of the Rideau Trail Association, and he, with Chris Barber, contributed or created, I guess, the book Their Enduring Spirit. So again, he was very dedicated to the park area and to the Friends and to the human history of the park. Erhard Frenzel was one of, I guess, principal people around the foundation of the park, around the foundation of the Friends, and provided tremendous support for it over the years. He was actually from, I think, he was born in 1940 and moved from the Czech Republic to Canada. He first worked in Montreal and then came to Kingston with Toyota, and was involved in establishing many of the trails in the park, before the park was actually operational, by setting out the trail routes. So we are, excuse me, for some of the trails, you will be indebted to Earhart for his skill in finding a decent route. He was key in running the winter camping training for many years. He was actually a qualified trip leader. He worked with the air cadets and brought groups of them out to the park, and so we had the resource of using him as a qualified leader for our overnight hikes. And so he was out at the park pretty much every weekend in some capacity, in volunteering, in construction work, and in providing latterly our winter camping training. So we are extremely indebted to him. He unfortunately passed away with a canoeing accident in Lake Superior in 2013. And so in view of his contribution, we established the memorial paddle in his name. Bottom right actually was probably one of my first days of working with Earhart. We constructed the bridge on the Moulton Gorge back in 1988, that was. So how things change. Bernie Adele was again a long time volunteer. He sorry, I have the notes from Jerome. He a very active Friends member, and did a lot in trail maintenance. He was out regularly with both the construction and trail maintenance work. I worked with him, a number of days out on the trails, and I have to say, I thought perhaps he was a retired farmer. He had this sort of mechanical aptitude. He knew about equipment and machinery, and very quiet. In fact, when he passed away, we found he was the former dean of the Faculty of Law at Queen's, and he was internationally recognized scholar in employment and labor law, which is remarkable. That he found relaxation and time to spend at the park as well. So we are very indebted to him. Ivan Jerome was Friends president in the 2000s, and it was he who switched the summer president's hike to a paddle, because it turned out was far more fond of watercraft. He was in fact very much involved with the Marine Museum of the Great Lakes, and he had his own boats as well on Lake Ontario, as well as participating in the park. So he had great abilities to I guess coordinate and get volunteers to help with things. So we are indebted to him. Chris Barber, I'd mentioned, was very energetic, retired police officer from Kingston, or actually detective from Kingston. But in retirement, he took on the task of speaking with many of the descendants of families, even some people who had actually been born in the park and left, to build this strong history of the park, and co-wrote the book, Their Enduring Spirit, with Terry Fuchs. And so he was still doing keen research to find buildings he'd heard about. I spent a day in, I think, 2000 with him. We did 22 kilometers in the snow, up and down the length of Big Salmon Lake and over towards Camel Lake and around, looking for a shelter that we found top right there that he'd been told about, but had never found on the ground before. And so we located this cabin. It had to be, again, a former hunting cabin that was there. So, but he was a fount of knowledge, great communicator, and very kindly, when he retired from the Friends, he donated the stock of books and the proceeds to the Friends as well. So that's now something that serves us very nicely. And then Murray Henderson, a long-time volunteer with the Friends, again, supported over many years, avid naturalist as well, and a canoeist. And so again, one person you could always rely on to come when we needed assistance with things, and unfortunately passed away about 3-4 years ago. And lastly, Val Rutten, who was a very strong volunteer as well. She helped out on the trails, but was better known for work around the park office in the chili that we had for our volunteers. But she also did an awful lot of other things. It was kind of interesting. You kind of heard that she took all the cushions that people sat on in that park office home to launder one day. And I came back from trail clearing once, and she did, oh yes, I spent the day washing the windows. And you know the trail centre park office has an awful lot of windows, but she spent the day washing those. Outside of the park, interestingly, she was very strong with the Legion in Harrowsmith. She organised in Sydenham the Remembrance Day parades, and was also in Scouts Canada. She had won the Diamond Jubilee Award for volunteering as well, and had a certificate from the Queen for that. But she never actually mentioned that. Really only found out these things at her funeral. So she was, again, great volunteer and will be missed. So thanks very much. And apologies if I've missed people. These were some of the key people, and they are roughly in order in which they passed away. Hoping I've got all the facts right there. So again, much appreciation to our volunteers present and past. Just now to wrap up with mentioning some upcoming plans. We are working, as mentioned, on the outdoor shelter, and this we hope will take shape in the next few months. We had to take down some trees, and we are using the lumber for the uprights and some of the interior paneling. It's going to be 26 by 42 feet, large enough for 2 classes. We'll be furnishing with picnic tables, and it will have electricity service, water, probably a screen, and we'll get a projector to use in it, so it can be used for all kinds of educational uses, both again for the school board, for children, and for our skills programs. So look forward to that. In association with this, going to be a couple of other new constructions. Barn swallow nesting boxes. We have plans for those as well. That will provide places again for the swallows to nest, and we have seen them, and they do nest at the park office, where sometimes it's not so convenient because of the people coming and going, and so having a separate structure will enable them to nest in peace away from the people coming in and out. Question in the chat, where's the outdoor shelter planned? It's going to be at near the park office. As you come in through the breezeway, the office window is on the left, and if you look sort of 45 degrees right, there's a kind of rock bank, and it's going to be beside that, on what is now a bit of picnic area. It'll be there. It will have one wall closed in. We will have options perhaps to close the shorter ends as well. The long wall will be closed in, shorter ends may be closed in as well, just with temporary canvas or something like that, as we need if it gets too windy. So that's the plan for the location. And associated with this, we'll have a pollinator garden as well. That's going to be something, again, as a feature to attract insects, again, to hopefully provide an educational opportunity for people to see them, and also support pollination. And we will be having some informative plaques also at Erica Kendrick at the park right now is working on developing to inform the public about this. We very kindly had actually an offer from somebody who joined the challenge last year to provide us a fall mushroom walk that we haven't had in many years, and so we'll be instituting that. And we have again, as I started to talk with, over this year with 30th anniversary celebration. And so we're planning a day for that, which is going to be the 20th of August. So please plan to come to the park for that. Celebration, barbecue. Again, it's going to be a combination of our family fun day, where we have free use of canoes. We hope also to have some talks from experts in different areas, some activities for children. Some of the local companies will come out and have trade displays as well of outdoor equipment. And we plan to unveil or have an opening ceremony for the outdoor shelter as well. It will look a bit like that one. That's one from another park, but that's the sort of corresponding with the plans that we have right now. And we'll probably have some cake as well. That cake happened to be the one when the Friends was initiated, so maybe we can make a copy of that. So So that's 20th of August, probably starting 10:30 in the morning. So please make plans to come for that. So with that, thank you very much. Oh, sorry. There we go. Just to wrap up and say thank you again to friends, volunteers, and staff, past and present, for 30 years of successful achievement and cooperation. And very many thanks to all of you for listening as well. So there should be time to answer some questions in the next few minutes. We sort of usually run these, timing goes to 8:30, so that if people want to have a chat and discuss, we can do that too. While you're thinking about that, I will just mention, while people are still on the line, just go back to our wrapper, as it were. Our next lectures, I'll just mention these now, and then we can get to some questions, just so I don't forget. We'll have our next virtual session, our online lecture, as our winter lecture, which will be on a weekend, on a Saturday, the 26th of February. And that's at 1 p.m. We have 2 presentations that day. One from Judy Montgomery on the culture and traditions of Indigenous peoples of Eastern Ontario, the Park area. And Maureen Sly will be speaking on the orchids of Frontenac Park. And so there will be links available for that. And again, it needs to be virtual. We do like to meet face-to-face when we can, but unfortunately this year, again, it's going to be virtual. And we have our annual general meeting. It starts at noon, so the lectures will follow that. And then our next evening lecture will be on the 24th of March. That's a Thursday. We haven't had them on a Thursday usually, but this time we are. And that's Colin Chapman, who is son of Kevin Chapman, who I think is on the line right now. And I hope Colin is too. The title being Hunting for Rare Lichens, Common Threads Between Atlantic Canada and the Frontenac Area. And Colin is a biologist and expert in that area. So thank you very much. But yes, go over to questions now if people have them. And I hope that those from the Friends, former presidents, past presidents, and board members and others on the line who have expertise will be happy to contribute to those too. Thanks. Right.
Simon.
Just going to unshare, stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. Right. Gosh, you can see people now.
Simon.
Yes.
It's Dora Hunter.
Hi,
Yeah.
Dora.
Hi. I just want to say thank you so much for tonight. This has just been a wonderful, wonderful review of that 30 years.
Well,
and you are, as usual, I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little choked up.
Oh,
but you are, as usual, being your usual modest self, and that you've been there all that time. And here we are still counting on you to summarize things and to summarize
yes.
the love so many people have felt for the park and for what the park has given to so many people too. So thank you very much.
Yes, thanks. Yeah. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thanks. Yes. Thank you, Dora, and thank you too, because again, Dora's one of the presidents of the park at a key time, and has done a tremendous amount on the natural history side as well. So thank you very much, Dora, and drove that purchase of that piece of land we talked about on Buck Lake. So thank you. Yes, I haven't been able to see faces because I've had the presentation. So I see Jane Kitchen, so who's one of our first park volunteers, and Maureen is there as well, Maureen Sly. So welcome, thanks very much. Yes, yeah, and Chris is there. I see Chris. So who's a park receptionist when I first started going. And there's the odd story that I was actually working in the same room as her father, but we didn't realize it till we started talking, which is, and at the same time, Chris's mother, Elma Van Aggs, was in an aquafit class with my mother. So we had this odd connection all around. So anyway, yeah.
Nice to see you, Simon. Yeah, lots of memories. That was yes. That was a great slideshow. Brought back many memories.
Thanks so much indeed. Thanks. Thank you. Great to see you, Chris. I see Don is there too. So welcome, Don Stables, who again is our current and long-standing camping, winter and summer camping presenter. So, and navigation course in the past, and probably several other areas too. We've had many happy adventures, camping summer and winter in the park. So yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, as say, very willing if there are questions, I or others may be able to answer them.
Oh, hi, Simon. I had a question.
Oh yeah,
sorry. So I'm Ken Little. So nice to meet you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Right. Yes, sorry. I think I can see you, but I guess I can't. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, there you are. No. Right. Yes.
There you go. Actually, a new arrival to the area, so very excited to hopefully participate with Friends of the Frontenac Park. So we just moved on to Devil Lake.
All right. Right.
So it'll be lovely to have the access. But I heard you saying this is the first time picking up the fall mushroom adventure for a while. So has there been other either kind of standing excursions, and has there been much of like cataloging or otherwise other for like fungal species in the park?
Well, that's an interesting question. I see Maureen is nodding. I would defer. You need to unmute Maureen. Maureen and Dora and Tom Marsh were involved in a natural history group that did a lot of research. So I will defer to you. Maureen, you may need to unmute if you want to speak. I see you speaking, but I can't hear you. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're there now, yes.
Many years ago, we had a man come, an older gentleman. He was a farmer, and Dora will remember, I can't remember his name, but he taught us and he gave us the names of the books. So I have this book by David Okora that's about that thick, but it's an amazing book. But yes, we did have the mushroom walk, and people would phone up and say, should I bring my own containers? Because they thought we were going to pick from them. I said, no. It's just to learn about them and to see them actually, in growth. But I've noticed when I used to hike with Tom and Dora, we saw so many mushrooms. Just, lately, I don't know whether it's climate change or whatever, but I don't see as many as we used to see. We used to see a lot of the, oh gosh, I don't know, honey mushrooms and all kinds of stuff. And it's things that I never see them anymore. I don't know why. Chicken of the woods and all those sorts of things.
Been a few of those, yes. I can comment that the 2020 in the challenge, it was very rich with mushrooms.
Yes,
fungi.
It was.
And that actually inspired us for the 2021 challenge to use mushroom names, fungi names as the clues. Yeah. And of course, it was a much poorer year this year. I think drier summer, mushrooms are much later. And so we sort of it kind of tripped over ourselves. But as I say, this lady Louise Langlais from Bruce Trail Club, a group of them came to hike the challenge, and she is a mushroom expert. She gave a talk in November to this group about mushrooms at one of our monthly lectures, the previous one, and then offered to come and give us a mushroom walk in the fall. And I think we've chosen 1st of October for that mushroom walk. So that'll be announced and available. Yeah. So it's nice to get these things back. Yes, thanks. Yeah. Thank you. I see a couple of in the chat, a couple of questions. One from Ken is saying, Ken, I don't know, would you please provide details about the canoe challenge? Now, I think the question, what I would do naturally is defer that to Chantal, because she's organizing it. And it is, I think, to travel a number of lakes within the park on a route. There will be the same kind of clues like we have for the hiking challenge on the lakes. And she's also prepared a quiz about park lakes to do, as well as a bit of fun while doing that. So it's going to be a route, I guess you can make your own route up around lakes in the park, about a dozen lakes within the park, to do the same kind of challenge. They'll be posting the clues on I guess trees around a lake, and so to do the same kind of extent of challenge that we or similar idea, at least, as our hiking challenge. That's about all I know at the moment, but there will be details coming out too. Thanks. Now, question: any details or stories about the development of campsites 14, 15, and 16? I'm just seeing, I don't see anyone, don't see Ben on the call. So should mention, I guess, an area here is that I guess we have a demarcation in planning. So the Friends weren't involved in the planning of those. That was entirely a park activity. They may take advice in certain areas, but it was a park thing. Friends do help with campsite construction once it's laid out. It was the management plan, and I know Dora and others will remember back in the late 90s, 2000s, talking about the park management plan, which actually took nearly, I think, 10 years to sort of come to fruition. But it has been developed, the new park management plan. And that did propose some new campsites. It also proposed a zoning of the park so that the generally southern side, that to the south of Big Salmon Lake, is more important environmentally than the northern side. So new campsites are going in on the northern side, and the new sites, 14 is on Big Salmon Lake, fairly close to Site 3, just probably a kilometer away. 15 is on it's on Big Salmon Lake on the south shore, I guess between Site 4 and Site 5, and 16 is up on Clearwater Lake. This is the first time there's going to be a campsite on that lake. They're individual sites. So again, to dig back to that park history, and I'm sorry, I'm not giving you all the story about the development of them, but the rationale. Because of the threshold of wilderness concept, the park developed these cluster campsites, as they're called, where there are 2, 3, or 4 tent pads together and one privy. And that was, again, to simplify maintenance, of course. It was also so that if people were camping for the first time and had trouble, they might have someone they could call on if they needed help with something. So it was part of this threshold to wilderness concept that the park was a place people could come and learn the skills they needed for more travel in more remote areas. And that's worked very well. But again, the idea that some people would like to come and have a solo experience camping, within their own group rather than in a cluster with others. So these new sites are to facilitate that need, so that people can come and camp just on one campsite in that location on their own, so to fulfill that. So that is, I guess, the rationale for them. Again, the location is sort of based on nice areas and sort of spacing from other sites. And that environmental issue with the southern side versus northern side. That's pretty much as I know, but I don't know if anyone else has got thoughts on that to add in. That's that. As for any more sites, I'm not aware of any more going to be in the park interior. What I did learn from the plan was that they may look at having some sites pretty much alongside the road as you drive into the park office. So when you do the 180-degree turn, sort of the old homestead there, farmstead, and then go into the park with the main parking lot on the left, on the right side, between the maintenance shed and the sort of the loop that you go in on, they may put some tent pads in there. And that's to accommodate people who may arrive late and not be able, if they come from Toronto or further away, they may arrive in an evening and not be able to go into the park just because it's too dark. So this will be a sort of locations for temporary camping for late arrivals. That's what I've heard from the management plan. But at the moment, I haven't heard anything, any plans from the park itself to start constructing those. Again, things have been a bit discombobulated because of COVID, so that may be why. But that is one of the plans as well. Yeah, what else to say? I can comment. I did see some of the original plans for the park back from the 70s. That was interesting, where they'd actually planned to buy the land on the west side of the road and turn it into car camping. So where the Scout Camp and where those properties are on North Otter Lake, that was going to become a campsite, and even talk of having a road through the park at one time. Alternatives for the park office, the trail center, might have been at Clear Lake or at Kingsford Dam or at Big Salmon Lake launching area. So it could have been a very different park had history gone a different way. Kind of interesting. But fortunately, it turned out in a particular way, so that I think it was very far-sighted at that time. The vision for a threshold to wilderness park that you know at that time brought people from a long way to come and enjoy this wilderness experience, and still does. And so we're, again, in Kingston, we're extremely fortunate to have this gem on our doorstep that is there, and is we hope going to continue to be well managed and available into the future. And as a Friends group, we can be, I think, very pleased that we have done a lot to support that over the years. It's been, I guess, a very I guess, very good cooperation over the years, I'd have to say, and very satisfying to have been involved with. Okay, from Carol, a question on where will the pollinator garden be located? It is going to be in the zone that we call the picnic area near the park office. So it'll be in that section there. So it won't be involving any deforestation. It'll be in an open area. Obviously, advantage for that. So it'll be set there, looking like it's going to be a raised bed, again because of soil depth there, and it'll have sort of lumber surround. And Erica Kendrick, who's a lady you may meet when you go to the park. She's working in the office there. She is taking on the planning on a big way. So she's looking at to acquire the materials. We can probably get volunteers to help build it. Anybody wishes to volunteer to come and build it. And I've been installing a variety of native plants to, I guess, represent the pollinator species. And it'll be something, with seeds and so on, will be self-sustaining once it gets going. So that's the plan. There will be, again, an informative plaque as well about the pollinator garden. We're wondering, with the swallow nesting and the pollinator garden, and maybe a future bat nesting structure as well, whether it's combined with the swallows or separate, we may have a sort of mini nature trail that people can follow around as well to learn, or at least for children to follow around in that area to learn more about the natural history there. So that's a possibility too. I do. Somebody, Brenda, you have your hand up. Is that?
Sorry, I thought that was clapping.
Oh, I see. Okay, I just wanted. Sometimes people do that. Yeah. Right. Question on volunteer training this year. That's a great question. I think the answer is yes. Now, it's been discussed at the board meeting recently and in discussion with the park. Again, because of the up and down uncertainty of use of buildings with COVID, we are contemplating, and this probably is under the table news. I might get my fingers slapped for actually telling people this because it's still being worked through. But we may do outdoor training, so have it outside in the picnic area, and it may be shorter than usual, but because obviously we can't have a slide projector out there at this stage. But so we would cover the essentials of pruning and clearing the trail and so on, and putting up markers. But it will be that part, maybe just a couple of hours or 2 or 3 hours, for the essentials, so that we can get volunteers trained. Should mention for anybody not aware, because people are using tools that the park provides and other things, we are actually legally obliged to provide training every 2 years for volunteers. Or rather, volunteers are required to take training every 2 years. Sorry, we provide it every year so that we can maintain a group. And so that will be something we offer. Because we want to do it outside, and we normally do it in March, we might put it a month later. So it'll be towards end of April, just so it's warmer and perhaps drier outside, so it's not so inconvenient. But we may then have a trail sweep and work be in consequent time after that as well. It's still not decided exactly the dates though. But one other thing that people might be interested in, we have had the host program, as I mentioned, where people inside the park office introduce the park to people and talk to them while they're waiting. Again, that doesn't work out. It doesn't work in the same way outside, put it that way. But we do have sometimes a long line of people, particularly during the challenge time, people coming in to register. And so we might have an opportunity for volunteers essentially to entertain, the crowd outside, or maybe talk to people one by one as they're waiting. And we might get a park map put on a plaque. We might, have some brochures to hand out and things like that. For people new to the park, particularly to learn a bit more about it. And the other thing there is now a call for in the peak time of the challenge, September and October, of course, is actually parking control at Arab Lake, Big Salmon, and in the parking lot near the park office. That the challenge has got so popular that parking can be a problem, particularly weekends and the early weekends of September. It's absolutely packed. So having someone up there to direct traffic, control parking, and again talk to people, hand out materials to them as well, was something the park is looking at. So you may see a notice about that soon. Again, for volunteers for that, and that will be something perhaps we have associated with that spring training, that we add people wanting to do this hosting kind of work, informing park visitors. We'll have some training for them in how we deal with the hosting situation, how we talk to people, and the hosting is a sort of two-way street, by the way. It sounds easy. You just tell people what's in the park and show them the map and everything, but actually, you do get people coming out in Crocs, slip-on shoes, saying, "I'm going to do the Slide Lake Loop at starting 3 in the afternoon," and back in time for tea. And you can do a bit of judgment about people's footwear, people's general expectations about the trip they want to do. So you can advise them, well, it's not as easy as it looks from the map, kind of thing. Those kind of things. So the hosting is sometimes it's a bit of gentle advice on what is probably feasible for people. Some people just don't realize the scale of the park when they come out, and so that's another part of the role as well. So okay, so there we go. That's a good one. Oh yes, Carol would like to help. Thanks very much. Help with the garden. Oh yes, please do. Please contact Erica. And where do you find the challenge records, fastest time, etc.? Get a question on that. I know Chantal is really the person who is coordinator of the challenge, and we may not have sort of fixed records, but I think the newsletter probably has the essential facts every year about the challenge. And I think Chantal does keep her own private records on the time, so that people want to know. So I'm sorry I can't answer that right now. I would say the best thing now is to contact Chantal. She's president at Friends of Frontenac. She's got a email address I can put in the chat. And
Simon,
yeah,
we may have had some people that have trail runners.
Yes,
have actually ran it.
Oh yes, we have. Yes, yeah. And I think it's down in the 30s of hours now. Sorry, mad people who sort of come in, camp, wake up at 3 a.m. and start running around the trails and stuff, and yeah, it's become its own challenge, I guess. And so yeah, but yeah, thanks Don. Yes, and the other one, it's the youngest. We seem to be driving younger and younger with the challenge, and I think although we have a junior challenge, some of the youngest people actually have done the full challenge. I think we're down to 4 and 5 year olds now for doing that as well. So it's quite remarkable too. Except of course dogs are doing it 1 year, but I guess that doesn't count. Okay. Thanks,
Simon.
Yes.
Overall, the participation that everybody is starting to do. When Lloyd came up with the challenge, and then we came up with the yearly challenge.
Camping, yes.
Yeah. There's only so much time we can put in a year before things get stagnant again.
Yes.
Do you think we should, in another year or two, we should have another think tank with everybody and get the
yes, it would be nice. Yes,
stuff on the wall again?
I'd be very much in favor of that. And for people not familiar with this sort of idea, that you say we get together, well, last one we did in 2014, again, seems like yesterday. We had presentations from Ontario Parks on useful aspects, and from biologists and other people about natural history. And then we had games with post-it notes and everything, putting on the wall and sorting them out, getting ideas and sort of collating these. What do we have? I think it was 75 ideas, and then try to do an analysis of those. And sorry, it got into sort of, well, you work for a company, you get all these management stuff they do, and it was cost-benefit analysis, and what were the easy hits, what was going to be easy to do and give us a good return on investment, as it were, on the effort put in, versus the things that had less. And some of the things I have to say from the one we did in 2014 have been implemented. I'm trying to remember what they are, but one was the junior challenge, and the Trek was out of that. The broadened education initiatives that we've taken on were out of that as well. Some of the fauna and flora surveys, I mentioned those as well, but they're out of that. So yes, it has borne. There's still some more from that we haven't yet thought about, but it did bear fruit that way, and we can. I think it's a really good way to engage membership, to do that exercise regularly. We are different from other organizations, and you realize that, in that until we started these monthly lectures, we didn't have regular meetings as a group, except for the volunteer training and the AGM. That was it. We did 2 events a year, generally fairly close to each other. And after that, it was pretty much, people on their own, turning up when they wished to volunteer at the park, or when we had the nature hikes and other things like that. We never had anything that could overall bring the entire group together, except for those 2. And not everybody in the Friends volunteers, of course. So it was actually only, and AGMs tend not to attract people. I know that. So we had this difficulty, and that we didn't gather as a group. So there are ways we might pursue that as well, where we can be more engaging of the overall membership, virtually or in person again. So there are other ways. I'll also mention again something I've been to now 3 times, which are regional Friends meetings. So we have this Ontario Nature Federation twice a year meetings, in spring and fall with the local groups, but there are also events called Circle of Friends that are held infrequently, where friends groups get together. There used to be actually a very good structure to this, but it got a lot of government support. It was every 2 years it was federal, every 2 years it was provincial, and these intermesh. So every year there was something going on. Back in the 90s, this was, and that kind of just I guess didn't happen after a while. So the last one, I went to one in 97, and the last one I went to was in 2014 at Sandbanks. Again, it was a regional one, but again, excellent to talk with other friends groups and learn from them about what they're doing. And some are new friends groups want to learn from us as well. That's the nice thing. And of course, you exchange ideas. You have all kinds of stuff coming out of that. And it would be nice again for that system to get rolling again, so that there were regular meetings like that. Not every, well, it's 8 years since the last one, and I'm still quoting stuff from that. One thing that happened is organizing volunteers. That the Ontario Parks was going to put together an internet-based system to organize volunteers, so that people would sign up in this standard system. New volunteers wanting to volunteer, the high school kids who need their 40 hours, as well as managing your own cadre of volunteers, and make it an easy sign-in thing. So yeah, I'm going to be free this weekend between these hours, click, and there you are. The park now knows it, rather than calling or emailing and that kind of thing that we do now. That was all ready to go, and it never happened. But it's something, again, we should perhaps say it would be a good idea to get going, I guess, again, not just with our park, across parks. So yeah, there's ideas like that. One thing I mentioned as well, and it's a tremendous thing that Chantal accomplished. We started with say a dozen volunteers doing trail maintenance, and that gradually grew. But I think, Donnie can confirm, Jane as well, I think that it settled at around 30 to 35 people we had in a regular volunteer crew over the years. And that was plenty, suitable enough for what we needed. But we hadn't really tapped into social media. And when Chantal got going on this and started using email and Facebook and those new things, sorry, fancy things, suddenly we turned up to do volunteer training one week, well, one March, and the lineup was out the door. And I think we had 64, 65 people that day signed up to be volunteers at the park. Incredible. And so we have a strong volunteer crew as well. That now we've got them, we really need to direct them, and we have this willingness, communal willingness, as it were, to do stuff. And it's actually becomes something you have to think, how do you manage this? Because if you don't engage people who are keen to do something, you'll turn them off, they'll go elsewhere. So you might want to discuss and say other ways, if we do have a vision day, other ways we might engage that. One possibility is something that we see in other parts of the world, where volunteers aren't necessarily attached to a park. They work with Ontario Parks and they go where they're needed. Now, don't say we go to that system, but it might be something that we become open to, that one day we may send 10 volunteers to Charleston Lake to help them out, or to Presqu'île, or to Bon Echo, or wherever, and they may send people to us if we need them. That's as a possibility, that you encourage a sort of zonal volunteering, so that you get the extra help when needed, and also you can broaden the experience of your own volunteers. That's a nice thought to think about, to do there as well. I don't know, but this is just me talking, but there's other ideas we could think about. I'll say it now, because is Dora still there? Apologies, no, she's not. Oh, you are. Sorry. Oh, there. Sorry, but I was trying to read the names, and I guess it had gone dark. Well, I would like. Sorry, this is personal speaking again. We have these things going on with natural history, but we don't really have a natural history group like we used to with you and Tom and Maureen. And it would really be good to try and stimulate some more research like that. We do have a student bursary. Sorry, I forgot to mention it. It was on the slide, but I didn't read it out. We provide a bursary now every year for student research in natural history or human history of the park. And that's sort of open, covers a year, and it's open up in September. But I'm wondering whether a specific initiative to acquire equipment and to manage projects in natural history might be something we could start to look at.
The equipment idea is very good. Something that was a wonderful evening was Anne Robertson used to, and I assume she still does, has a teenage group.
Yes, the teens, yeah.
They came up to the park when we did a frog walk with them. And it was in the spring, and we identified frogs by the calls, which is easy to do. And the young people were so enthusiastic.
Yes.
And I always felt that I was unable to go somewhere with that for the park's sake, so that maybe out of a connection like that, because certainly you still have the connection with Anne Robertson.
Oh, we do, yes. Yeah.
Maybe something like that could grow a group of younger people who are fit enough to be wandering about the park the way we used to do.
Right.
But that's one thought that just comes to mind now, just because I know what a successful evening I had with those young people.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yes.
So that's one thought.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I have to ask you while I'm with you, is that your mother's painting behind you?
Oh, no, sorry. It's actually one of mine. No, not really. It's a photograph that's been modified slightly to look like a painting. It's Big Salmon Lake from Site 3, or near Site 3, one winter camping session where before the lake had frozen. Sorry, that's a few years ago now. So yeah, sorry about that. It's
you are a talented fellow, and thank you again very much for this evening.
Oh, most welcome. Thank you. One thing I'll mention before you go, Dora, we did have one of our evening lectures, back in, I think, September, was a lady who spoke about bats from the Winnipeg Bat Laboratory, I guess it is. Unfortunately, she hasn't been in touch again, but she did provide a lot of useful information, one of which is that there are devices you can now attach to a mobile phone that can translate, as it were, the bat echo sounding into audible form, of course, but also analyze the clicks and the structure of that sound to identify the bat species.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that'd be something fun to get.
Yes.
And you know, and it links to a database. So any bat species, any bat in North America, I think, you know, is on the database. So, you know, I think we only have about 8 different species in our part of the country, but you know, it is a useful little device. And so there's, you know, they're available. So I'm wondering, you know, if we could encourage you know, some direction of funds to that, or have a donation for that kind of thing. So, and establish some kind of longer term monitoring program to, you know, maybe the same day every year, or several days a year, but at the same time of year, we do a listen for bats and create again a long-term survey of the species and the frequency of them. Anyhow, ideas like that. Sorry. Yeah.
You remind me again. I mean, the frogs obviously were a nighttime thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've been out there wandering the trails and picking up Luna moths in our flashlights, and hearing owl calls and calling back to them. And this bat idea would just fit in beautifully with all of that. So it's great.
Well, there's more fun to be had in the future then. Thanks. Yes. Thank you. So thanks very much. Yes. Great. I see Walt Sepich is on the line as well. So Walt has provided many of the skills programs in different outdoor activities for the park. And again, that's something we have an interest in expanding the opportunities for those as well, I'd say, for thinking of the future. We have, you know, one of those weird things, look to the past as well. What did we do once that we don't do anymore in terms of skills programs that we might want to reinvigorate? There's thoughts there to broaden the scale of what's going on. Again, COVID unfortunately has put a dent into things that we haven't been able to do anything for the last 2 years, and probably this year is going to be a bit haywire as well. But it would be nice to think about what are areas that we have done the skills that could be sort of brought back again, or new ones we could try. A new one, for instance, is the GPS usage. That is a new technology that you know, that Dave is now, I guess, is well entrained and extremely well subscribed courses for navigation. But we used to have photography, winter, summer, you know, fall, with you know, well recognized people. And William Reynolds, one of the guys, is a national author. And we had a lady who won the Nikon photo contest one year with a photo taken in the park, who was again a professional. And so we have these opportunities there to bring some new things in. And so again, it's a matter of planning and getting people engaged. I mean, Camera Kingston was great. I mentioned on the photography one, I did many of their courses, and they're incredibly generous. I still have gaiters I use that they gave away for free as a door prize, as it were, for coming to their course, their lecture, back in 1992, I think it was. It's incredible. So it was popular. I mean, we got a lot of support locally. So that's something again we could try. But if there are other skills areas to try out, as it were, to bring in, and as I say, we're restarting a mushroom walk, and maybe other natural areas like as you say, frog walks and other things we could bring in as well for the natural history side, for the public engagement. Somebody said Ken has said Frontenac at night. That'd be interesting. Yes. I mean, I can say one thing. Sorry, way back we did, getting back into the 30-year thing, is an overnight stay at the park office. In fact, a sleepover for kids, basically, with their parents. But we had a plan. It was a good plan. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because we were planning an astronomy evening, and got someone from the Kingston, there's a club in Kingston, I guess, and the Queen's Observatory, ready to give us a talk on, you know, with a telescope, and give us a talk on the stars and all these things. Rather unfortunately, it was cloudy, and so that didn't pan out. But we still did the sleepover. We had, I don't know, 6 to 8 kids staying over. You know, campfire and then inside and sleeping bags on the floor there. It's not that comfortable. In fact, since then the carpet's been replaced by tiles, so it's even less comfortable. But that's what went on. Something again we could plan, maybe have a hike in dusk, and then astronomy, and then stay over, and Don could give us breakfast in the morning, because Don's breakfasts are amazing.
Possibly we could bring back maybe Hug a Tree program.
Yes.
For the children again. We did run in years past when Heather was very young. We ran Hug a Tree and a few other things for the kids. Yeah. But again, it's endless what we could do once we have the people to, bring forth these skills and do things for the people.
Yes.
Other than that, the park has been expanding at a pretty constant rate. Yes. One time we didn't have that many people in this natural environment park. And then all of a sudden we had to expand the parking lot.
Yes.
Now we're expanding the trail center. And for something that came on as a training park and used to give in, we had some great speakers at one time.
Yes.
Suzuki,
Well, we had I didn't really emphasize it when I was talking. I'll see if I can find the slide again. It was well, I mentioned we
Bill?
had Bill Mason was the one. So I'll try and pull that up because yes, he if people haven't heard of Bill Mason, I think you should have done. You've probably seen what he's done. He was a filmmaker, Path of the Paddle, Paddle to the Sea, and things like that, and then avid canoeist and wrote books on canoeing. James Raffin, who's a local naturalist and outdoor person, wrote his biography called Fire in the Bones. Sorry, trying to find, there's a slide, I'll just share again. And so, yeah, we were extremely fortunate, I mean, amazingly fortunate to have Bill Mason come and speak, because he died the year after. And he had this magical tent that he had, and canoes and so on. We also had Oma Stringer, and actually I did another talk back in May, which only 2 people came to, so but I had some other slides earlier on in the Oma Stringer was again another canoeist, had his own, the Beaver Canoe Company was his. And so he came and gave canoeing demonstrations here as well. And so, as you say, we did have very well-known people come and talk at this park, and we could maybe pursue that again. I'm hoping for our 30th anniversary, for the event, we will have some prominent speakers as well. Maybe we can get James Raffin back and others. He has been to a winter lecture at times, so that's a possibility there as well. So yeah, so that's that. So other points of interest. I'm just hunting my 30 years in the park.
Someone was mentioning about snowshoeing.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that. Sorry about that. Yes.
Remember with Edward Grundy, we used to have
yes.
snowshoeing at one time.
We did, yes.
But it's so hard to plan for snowshoeing. It's
yes.
There's a couple people who plan for snowshoeing down in the Kingston area, and they're able to be very flexible with their times. But when we plan, I've already been committed for certain lectures and speaking during the summer here at the park. So
yes.
I commit to that much earlier to get in the tabloid.
Right, oh yes, yeah.
Rain or shine, we can do what we do, but it's very difficult to live without snow for snowshoeing.
It is rather, yes.
Or when you're dependent on the weather.
Yeah.
But like anything else, you can just keep planning and keep presenting, I would imagine.
We can try it, yes.
Yeah. The park was designed for skills programs. That was its intent for its natural environment. But Simon, I just got to get going soon, but thank you very much for the presentation.
Well, thank you. Thanks for, all the help and all the ideas. I'll mention, as you're here, Don, before you go, I did this in an earlier talk, and say I did a talk back in the day, May last year, where pretty well nobody came. And so I reprised some of that for this talk, but I hope I'm still sharing. But I will mention one thing, the project you and I have talked about, Don. I can get this thing to share to display, which is the James Hall Waterway.
Yes,
Um,
we did
well,
that.
while we're here, yes, yeah,
4 of us did that
we did,
a
yes.
few years ago. One was doing the navigation, one was doing the photography, you.
Yep, yes. Well, actually, talking of which, there we go. That's the photographs from it. Yes, so some photographs. So I'll mention for people who don't know that back in '86, when I first came to the park, there was a plan for another park called the James Old Waterway Park. And waterway parks are a class of park in Ontario park structure. This was, as you see, fully planned to go. They had a management plan for it underway. They had, put plaques up. The plaque's still down by the Trail Centre dock. And the park is 97 kilometers from Frontenac to Charleston Lake, but linking to the Rideau system and to the Gananoque River. So offering very interesting canoeing tripping opportunities. And it didn't happen in the end because mainly local landowners were concerned about illegal camping and other things. But I guess the concept still exists. And we had talked about, you and I, Don, and others at times, about the possibility of promoting this thing further. It goes through some beautiful country. It's a 4-day canoe trip. There are camping opportunities on the way, so that it can readily be done. And so Jerome, me, Don, and Paul Vickers did this in May 2015. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for again as a paddling route. So something again we might consider bringing back. So okay. Well, this is great. This is, I think, the longest lecture we've had, and I find it so interesting. And the last time I did a historical talk, we had 2 people sign up, and it turned out that was the same person who'd accidentally registered twice. And so I don't know what went wrong with that day, but it's great that this time we have, well, not only many more people, but also obviously a great level of interest. Yeah. So there we go. I think I'm going to have to start.